This is the Danites, painted by John William Waterhouse in 1906 at the high tide of his late pre-Raphaelite maturity. Waterhouse reaches back to a brutal Greek myth and turns it into a meditation on beauty, guilt, and the weariness of endless labor. Before we know the story, the image arrests us. 7 young women form a slow arc around a bronze cauldron. Their arms tilt heavy jugs. Silver columns of water fall and instantly drain away through a snarling spout carved like a mask. The setting is a rock bowl, steep, dark, and airless, so tight that the figures seem pressed against the picture plane. Color does a strange double act. Garments glow, olive, russet, plum, a deep marine blue, while the world around them chills into slate and moss. No one meets our eyes. Heads dip, shoulders slope. The work continues. The scene is the punishment of the Danaids. Ordered by their father Danaus to murder their husbands, the 50 sons of his rival Aegyptus, 49 daughters obeyed. After death, they are condemned to Tartarus, where they must carry water forever and pour it into a vessel that can never be filled. It is the mythic emblem of futility, a sister to Sisyphus. Waterhouse chooses not the crime, not the judgment, but the aftermath, the long, low drone of consequence. He does not paint all 49. He condenses the story to a representative chorus of 7, a favorite number in his work. The effect is theatrical, a keyhole stage set with figures arranged in a semicircle around a single prop. Yet the performance is drained of drama. What remains is rhythm. Lift, tip, pour. Lift, tip, pour. The choice of subject is quintessential Waterhouse. Born in Rome to painter parents, trained as a sculptor before turning to paint, he absorbed classical myth as a first language, then translated it into the pre-Raphaelite dialect of luminous color and literary feeling. Unlike the movement's founders, who often aimed at moral clarity and sharp enameled detail, Waterhouse softens edges and thickens atmosphere. He wants not a sermon, but a mood, melancholy, suspended, inward. That desire shapes everything here. Look at the geometry. The composition locks around the cauldron's rim, a perfect circle anchoring the canvas. From it spring 3 verticals, the twin streams of water and the central column of the basin's throat. Quiet counterpoints to the many diagonals of tilting jars and bent necks. The figures' bodies form a chain of mirrored angles. The green-robed woman's lifted arm echoes the red-haired woman's forward lean. The central figure's downward gaze is picked up to either side like a chanted refrain. Read the painting right to left, and you feel a soft decrescendo. From the vigorous pour at the edge, through a slackening mid-gesture, to the figure in shadow stooping to refill a vessel that will only be emptied again. The movement circles back on itself. The composition performs the punishment. Waterhouse's light is tender, not punitive. It slips over shoulder blades and collarbones, catches on the rims of brass, fades on the rock. This is not the theater of Revelation, where a god exposes guilt. It is the light of late afternoon, complicating everything, adorning beauty, admitting pity. He learned from sculpture to give bodies weight. He learned from the pre-Raphaelites to give fabric memory. Drapery clings, sags, and pools with a tactile truth that makes the women's exhaustion palpable. The cauldron itself is a small masterpiece of invention. It is not simply leaky, it has a face. The spout is a scowl, a lion mask or grotesque mouth that swallows the water as fast as it arrives. Inanimate punishment becomes a character, a jeering participant. If the myth encodes a patriarchal horror, the daughter's revolt against marriage answered by relentless discipline, then the vessel's maw is the emblem of that order, devouring the women's labor as soon as it is offered. Notice, too, the sameness among the sisters. Contemporary accounts suggest Waterhouse used a single model repeatedly. Here, individuality dissolves into a collective fate. Red hair flares in one, deep brown in another. But the faces rhyme. Downcast, inward, undramatic. There is no relish in their crime, no rage at their judge. What we see is fatigue and resignation. Waterhouse's famous enchantresses, Circe, the Sirens, the Lady of Shalott, often wield beauty as threat. Here, beauty is a burden, a grace that cannot alter the terms of the task. Color carries the psychology. Warm robes, wine, umber, olive, hold the heat of life. Blood, flesh, the memory of earthly desire, and the wedding night turned weapon. Around them, the palette cools to blue-gray rock and dim water, Tartarus as a refrigerated space. At the very top, a slit of blue distance, a far, sunlit world, peeks over the cliff edge. It is a taunt, almost an afterthought, and it makes the enclosure tighter. Hope exists, but elsewhere. Waterhouse knew this subject well enough to try it twice. An earlier version from 1904 features fewer figures and a brighter palette. By 1906, he has pared the scene to something sterner, more inward, and submits it as his single entry to the Royal Academy. That decision matters. In an age of grand narratives and crowded salons, he asked the public to look, just look, at sustained, quiet sorrow. What does the painting mean? On the surface, it is a picture of futility, but Waterhouse complicates that ancient moral. In Hesiod, punishment affirms cosmic law. Here, the law is not triumphant so much as implacable. The image refuses catharsis. The water does not rise. The task does not end. Our attention shifts from crime to condition, from what the women did to what the women endure. Waterhouse doesn't absolve them, but he humanizes the aftermath. In doing so, he moves pre-Raphaelitism from moral tale to psychology. The myth becomes a study in repetition, how habit can dull memory, how routine can swallow guilt, how the self erodes in the grind of the same gesture made forever. There is a historical echo under this mythic surface. Waterhouse paints at the hinge of the Victorian and Edwardian eras, when Britain is facing its own repetitions, imperial wars, social anxiety, debates over women's roles. The femme fatale of the fin de siècle, dangerous, alluring, meets here the femme fragile, beautiful and burdened. The painting registers that cultural pivot, fascination with female power tempered by fear, answered not with spectacle, but with a vision of stamina, sadness, and work. One more way to read it. Start at the carved mouth at the base. The water gushes out, useless, into a channel cut into the rock and gone. Follow it upward through the bronze into the slender falls, along the handles grasped by tired hands, into the shoulders and backs that will do this again tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow. The true subject is not crime or even punishment. The true subject is time. Time that does not move forward, only around. Painting is also repetition, stroke after stroke, glaze over glaze, the same act performed until the surface holds. But where the sister's labor empties, his accumulates. Out of cycles he makes memory. Out of futility he makes form. That is the quiet triumph of the Danaids. It turns a story about the impossibility of completion into a finished, resonant whole. Severe myth, sympathetic light. Classical bodies, modern feeling. Waterhouse braids them with unusual clarity. The painting does not excuse, it understands. And in the stillness of that understanding, it offers a last uneasy grace that even in punishment, even in the closed circle of an unfillable vessel, human beauty persists and asks us to look longer.